Be careful.
He's and Scott Higgins, both of them coked up out of their minds.
Listen to you. He's down in the basement.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I think we should call this the Acement.
The Acement, yes.
Yeah, what do you think there, huh?
I like that. The Acement Studios.
Excuse me, I'm drinking beer. Hold on a second.
We usually drink bourbon on our end when we do the podcast, so
that's all right.
Feel free to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You shoot an 8-ball if you want. We don't care, as long as it's good stories.
Welcome to the Acement, everybody. It's time to go behind the funny every week.
I did it right. I did it.
You did it
though.
Perfect.
All right.
You're getting the video production nailed.
It's amazing.
But I don't know what it is when we go from the opening video, which is awesome. I love the video we've come up with.
Yes.
I added the audio. Ace put the video together, and I love it. I love hearing the voices of all the past guests and the stuff they said and the music that we put together. But the second we click from that to live, Ace giggles every time.
Well, because you know what the problem is? Because I'm watching the monitor, which is real time, but then I look over at your computer, which is a little bit delayed, and so it screws me up, and I just start laughing. I don't know why.
I know.
I apologize.
We have fun, people.
Yes,
that's what
we do. And why do we have fun, Scott?
Because of our good friends at Jefferson's Bourbon.
Yes.
Which all I will say.
Yes. Have you gotten an email back from them? Please?
I did.
Did you? And they said thanks, but no thanks.
No.
Really?
I'm putting together a little clip package for them.
Good. Well, God knows we've mentioned them on every freaking show for 4 years.
I said that to him. I said, well, I'll send you our best few, because if I sent you all of them, it would be about a 2-hour audio clip.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we mention you guys all the time.
Right.
Yes. Someone from the Jefferson's division.
Okay.
I did a follow-up email, and then I got an email back from someone from the Jefferson's division.
Good. So they got
and yes, we're let's just say that they asked for some things back from us.
I don't even care if they give us money. I just want 2 bottles a month. That's all I'm asking for. That would be great sponsorship.
Well, I'm going to start a little higher than that in the ask. All right. And then if we end up with 2,
4
I'm
bottles,
happy with it.
4 bottles of Ocean a month would be great.
Yes.
That would be fantastic.
But we love our Jeffersons. It is a great, if you like bourbon, you guys, and you haven't tried it before, you can't go wrong with any of them, from their small batch right up to Ocean, which we talk about all the time.
Yes.
All of their bourbons are great. They do not take it lightly. Their master distiller he is like 3rd generation bourbon maker, down in Kentucky, and they do an excellent job.
And
I've made old fashions with them. I've made whiskey sours with them. We drink it straight here on the rocks.
I mean, listen,
and it's fantastic.
And we talked about it. If they become a sponsor, we'll go down and we'll do the bourbon trail down in
and do a podcast live right from Kentucky Distillery.
That would be amazing.
That would be a lot of fun.
All right, that's our dream trip for season 6.
Yes,
or 5, whatever.
A trip to the Kentucky Distillery. But anyway,
that's not what we're here to talk about.
Thank you, Jeffersons. We appreciate it.
We do,
as always. And we're on an amazing run, and tonight is just another a great night. We always love when we have guests that have been mentioned in the past, and Ace has got a great one booked for us tonight.
And so you've heard us. We've interviewed a bunch of Boston comics who were there from the beginning. We talked to Paul Barkley. We've talked to to Mike Donovan, Mike McDonald, Ken Rogerson, Mike Ben. All of these guys that were featured in one of our favorite documentaries on comedy by Fran Salamita, When Stand Up Stood Out. And so I wanted to get this guy on. I only worked with him one time, and he was so gracious to me, and he was so nice. And I don't even remember what the occasion was, but it was at the Comedy Connection in Boston. And I was like, we have to get this guy on, because he was very prominently
Yeah.
featured. And, you know, when I started in 1989 and saw the Comedy Channel, which was the precursor to Comedy Central, there were certain people that were on all the time. And this guy was one of those guys. And if you're looking at political humorists, two names come to mind. One is a guy named Will Durst, and I don't even know if he still does it.
West Coast comedian.
West Coast. The second guy is this guy, and I'm so excited to have on the podcast tonight, Mr. Jimmy Tingle. Jimmy, thank you so much for being on. Here he is.
Gentlemen,
How you doing?
thank you so much. Here we are at the Tingle Empire. Tingle Studio. And look at you two. They said you had a great podcast, but they didn't say you were so handsome.
Oh, thank you.
Are you tuned into the right page
I
right
know.
now?
I
I mean, we're the ones drinking whiskey,
Yeah,
not
right.
you. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
How you guys doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Congratulations on the podcast. I hear it's great. I checked in with Mike McDonald. He said it's great. He said you do a wonderful job. So
Thank you.
congratulations on that. And congratulations on just keeping the Boston comedy scene alive and kicking and letting people know what's happening. It's important and we appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
Thanks.
definitely. When we didn't intend to kind of have this history of Boston comedy when we were talking to all these people, but as they went through their stories, and Martin Olson said it best, is
Yeah.
we now have this archive of, you know, Boston comedy and, you know, how it came to be and how it blew up during, you know, the boom and everything.
Yeah.
And so then it kind of became a focal point where there were certain people we had to get from those times. Do you remember Martin Olson, the piano
Oh, yeah.
player? Yeah, Martin. He was great when we had him on. So
Yeah, he's
you know.
wonderful. He's a good friend. We did the 40th Dingho reunion last July.
Last
and Martin,
year, yeah.
Martin was playing piano from
Oh,
LA.
wow.
And he was playing piano, and we had 25 or 28 comics from around the country.
Wow.
The Tingle reunion, all on Zoom. It was a tribute to Barry Cremens and
Yes,
a fundraiser
yes.
for his wife. But Martin was wonderful in that, and we rehearsed, and we had all these guys on. We had Paula Poundstone and Stephen Wright and Dennis Leary and Lenny Clark and Mike McDonald, and Martin Olson was there because he was the original piano player.
Right.
And so, yeah, we had a lot of laughs and told a lot of stories and enjoyed it. It was a very special time in the early 80s because Boston was not a comedy town or an entertainment town at all, but there was a lot of talent. And it was all mostly homegrown talent. And they just, we just started doing things. And myself, Buddha just got an open mic night. So Ace, if you go back to 89, man, that was the beginning too. You know, 89 was a very important year. Where did we work together? At the South Street Comedy Connection or the Faneuil Hall?
It was Faneuil Hall, and I'm not sure if it was a regular night where you were headlining and I was opening, or if it was one of the fundraisers for we did a fundraiser for Dave Fitzgerald. I don't know if you were on that night.
Yeah.
But it was, whatever it was, I just remember meeting you and going, oh my God, I remember you from comedy, from the Comedy Channel, being one of the original guys I used to love watching. You used to do the harmonica thing, right? In between each joke, you play the harmonica. And I was like, I loved your act. And then you went up and you just crushed that night. That's what I remember. Right. But it was, 89 I started, but I was in Rhode Island. So if you remember the club Periwinkles.
Yes.
That was where I started, was Periwinkles.
Yep.
And I didn't really go to Boston until 92 or 93. Because
great club, Periwinkles.
Oh, it was awesome. Well, Charlie Hall had told me, he said, listen, get good here.
Yeah.
Don't go up to Boston. They're going to eat you alive. Get good here, work on it, get a good 5 to 10 minutes solid here, and then go to Boston.
Yeah.
So that you're a little bit above, the rest of the people who are at open mic nights.
Nobody told me that.
Yeah, you went straight to Boston.
Because I started much later. I started in 2000, and my first night was right in North Andover at the Grill 93. And then my second night was Noxie's open mic at the Faneuil Hall Connection. Yeah. So those were my first 2 times on stage. So
where are you from, Scott?
Connecticut.
Okay, cool. So did you come up to Massachusetts to start doing the open mics, or had you moved here?
No, I was driving up doing the open mics up in the Boston area.
Oh, so you were traveling like 50, 60 miles to do it.
Yep. I was driving up there doing the spots up there because there was nothing going on in Connecticut at the time. There was a couple of treehouse rooms that were booked shows, but no open mics anywhere. So everything was in Boston. So I was driving up to Boston 2-3 times a week doing spots.
Good for you. Good for you. You know something? It's the type of thing that if you love it, you will drive 100 miles to do 10 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You know, I used
for
to
gas money.
I used to hitchhike to UMass Amherst to show at the Blue Wall. And it was probably, 83, 84, maybe earlier. It was maybe earlier on. Anyway, if you love it, you just love it, and you do it for the love of doing it. Most of us didn't ever think we'd make a career out of it, but
right. Yeah, you did it because you wanted to make people laugh. You wanted to get up on stage and make people laugh. The first time someone hands you money for it, you're like, "You're giving me money to do that? That was so much fun. Are you kidding me?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So you started, what year what was the first time you got on stage? What year was it?
I actually, in the summer of 1980, I was probably going on in 1980 at Lenny Clark's open mic night. It might even have been 79. I was probably 80 though. And in the summer of 80, I went over to visit a friend in Sweden. A friend of mine, Pat Ryan, who played for Suffolk. We all grew up playing basketball. I grew up in Cambridge. I played for the high school. Everybody was a really good basketball player. We had all the kids I hung around with. They went to St. Mary's, went to the state championship. Cambridge Latin, where I went to the state championship. Ringe Tech went to the state championship. Matanon went to the state champion. I was immersed in basketball in my high school years. Anyway, my friend Pat Ryan, who went to Suffolk, was All-American. He was playing pro ball over in Sweden. And so I went over to visit him in the summer of 80, and I had just started doing open mics, and we did street performing all over Europe. And, and I admit there was a fine line between street performing and simply being drunk in public. I admit that. We'd put the hat down, and we'd get money, and we did it in Ireland. We did it at the Latin Quarter in Paris. And
wow.
I was doing comedy. I was doing the harmonica and song parodies in English, and people were pissed off in French. So it was a pretty wild time. But anyway, it was in the 80s, in 1980. And I started, and I did my first open mic with Lenny in 80, and I grew up literally 2 blocks from the old Ding Ho, so the whole neighborhood came, and so it was a big hit, because you're doing song parodies. So even if they're terrible, when the song is over, half the audience is applauding because they're your friends, and the other half of the audience is applauding because the song is over. So it was a huge applause.
Or they recognize the song and they're like, "All right, I didn't get it, but I know that song." Yeah.
No, exactly. They didn't recognize the songs. My first song was the Test Tube Baby Blues. Let me just give you the one stanza. I'm a test tube baby, that's why I got the blues. Was a man-made mutation, scientifically abused. I was the miracle of the laboratory. How come I never made 60 Minutes or even the news? So it was fun songs like that type of stuff, Yeah. Thank God I'm a city boy. Thank God I'm a Burbite. It was pretty fun. Yeah.
What made you get up on stage that first time? Was comedy something that you always wanted to do, or did friends tell you, "Oh my God, Jimmy, you're so funny, you should try comedy"?
I think I know what you said about you wanted to make people laugh, and that's definitely the end result of it. But I think deep down inside, it's really, for me, it was a form of expression. It was a way to, say things that were, either bugging you or you felt strongly about, or that was also funny. Like the song parodies I wrote were, there was sociological comments, like, thank God I'm a city boy. It was a takeoff of John Denver, thank God I'm a country boy. I was raised in the city where I learned how to fight. You jab with your left, you kick them with your right. If that doesn't work, get a gun, get a knife. If you still can't win, don't be an idiot. Run for your life. you know, and it went on and on. And the same thing about the suburbs, you know.
Yeah.
We moved to the burbs, we followed white flight, the neighborhood's great and all the houses look alike, and everybody's happy with their neighbor's wife. Thank God I'm white.
So even early on, you were kind of following that path of social commentary and, you know, things like that.
Yeah, the first major influence was Lenny Bruce, and not because I was a connoisseur of comedy or anything. I didn't even know who he was, but the movie Lenny came out in the 70s with Dustin Hoffman. And it was awesome because I'm in college, I'm studying things for the first time, sociology, the mind's opening up, history, you know, political science. So you're being, you know, not confronted, but you're just being educated in terms of how the world works and how the country works and everything, and all these social movements that are going on and currents and political currents in the country. And I would see the movie Lenny Bruce, and he's talking about discrimination and all this stuff back in the 50s, you know.
He's bringing it to the forefront.
He's bringing it to the forefront, and he's using comedy as the platform. And so he's funny, but he's also lecturing, and he's also instructing, and he's teaching, and he's funny, and he's dangerous for the time. You know, nobody swore in public. You know, nobody did that. But it was interesting because yes, he was dropping the F-bomb here and there, but the biggest things that he was getting busted for, the dirty words, but also the content.
It was what he was saying, right?
Yeah, he was taking on the church. He was taking on discrimination. He was taking on segregation. He was taking on a lot of those types of subjects. And
he was truly saying what people were thinking, but were afraid to say it out loud. And that's what we all say as comics. That's our job, is to kind of say what everyone's thinking, but they're afraid to say it out loud.
And at that time, comedians were the "take my wife, please" type of comedian.
Yeah, it was the one-liner.
So he totally flipped that around, and got up there saying stuff that they'd say in the privacy of their own home, but you know, so that was totally different way of thinking. I've listened to a lot of his stuff online and everything, and there were times he wasn't even necessarily trying to be funny. He was just commenting on societal things and making people think, like you were saying, Jim.
Exactly. So that was a big influence, but there were no comedy clubs, and I never really thought about doing it, but I knew Lenny from high school. We went to the same high school.
Oh,
and,
really?
And he was hosting open mic nights. He was a year ahead of me, or maybe 2 years ahead of me. But anyway, he was hosting open mic nights at the Ding Ho in Cambridge, where we both grew up. And I saw him on the street. I go, Lenny, I heard you're doing these open mics. Can I come down? He goes, yeah, sure. He goes, come on down, sign up on the list, and I'll give you 5 minutes. So I did that, and I brought a bunch of people, and they loved that. My friends drank a lot. And
of course.
And Lenny, they said, come back anytime. So that's what started it. But Lenny Bruce was the first influence, and then I met Lenny, knew Lenny Clark and Barry Cremens and Steve Wright and Paula Poundstone and Donovan and all those folks that you talked about, Leary, and we all started around within a couple of years.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. It's interesting because, you know, as we've talked to people about that initial Boston comedy scene, there really wasn't a comedy scene other than, there weren't comedy clubs other than New York City and I maybe LA.
That's right.
That Ding Ho, really, the Ding Ho and the Charles Playhouse really is what kind of started everything. So we had Paul Barkley on, and actually in a couple of weeks, we have Sean Morey coming on as well. So because honestly, when we talk about the genesis of Boston comedy, it's like Scott said, we've started talking to people that we knew, Donovan, McDonald, Rogerson. And as we've talked to them, we've dug deeper and deeper to where now we're talking to Paul Barkley, and we're like, Paul, you're responsible for starting the scene in Boston. And he goes, no, Sean Morey is the guy that's responsible for really starting it, because he was the one that was, you know, pretty much busking in the middle of Boston Common or at Faneuil Hall.
And he was teaching a class
and he was teaching
Paul Barkley and those guys took.
Right, that him and Billy Downs took. So it's just
is that right? He was teaching a course at Emerson. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what Paul had said. And so Paul and Billy Downs took the course, and they were like, and Paul said, we realized we weren't really that funny, but we realized, hey, there's a need for comedy. Why don't we open up a club? And that's when the Charles Playhouse opened.
Right.
And then he said, then they opened up the Ding Ho, And after a while, the Charles Playhouse was kind of saying like, all right, you got to pick one or the other because it's too close. Yeah. And that's when they said they gave up the Ding Ho, and Barry Crimmins had just moved from upstate New York and kind of took that on. So him and Lenny. So it's just been an interesting story all around. But so you started with like kind of social commentary. What got you into the political side?
Honestly, when I used to do all these song parodies. I wore a trench coat. I had a felt. I was like trying to be one of the Blues Brothers, you know, the Blues Brothers comedy, and played Monica and did these song parodies. And I did the Poopa Scoopa Blues. You know, I mean, I was advocating for poop on the sidewalk. That's how progressive I was. Okay?
Real edgy stuff.
Yeah.
Just leave it there.
I said, let my doggy do what he's gonna do. Do. So it was very, you know, crude. You know, when you start, you know how it is. When you start, you're just trying to get laughs.
Right. Yeah, you don't care how you're getting it.
But I would say that, but I did have a, you know, I was just always into politics. I kind of followed it as a kid in high school. I had relatives who were on local city government. So we had to hold signs for them on election day. And, you know, my parents were always on election night at the school counting ballots, you know, with the, so we were into it in that respect. And so anyway, it's just something I was interested. I was always interested in history and sociology, political science. So as a comic, and I know you guys know this, you kind of talk about what interests you.
Yeah, what you know.
Whatever you're into. Like Mike Donovan, for example, loves sports. He's a connoisseur of sports. His act is, you know, he's about the best I've ever seen in terms of sports comedians.
Right,
you know? And other people like Barry Crimmins, you know, really gravitated towards politics and social commentary because that's what he cared about. And the same with myself. I got sober in the 80s and just kind of focused on what was important to me, what I cared about, and what was in the news, really, whatever was in the news. So it was really more topical than it was. I didn't set out to be a political comic. I just was talking about what was in the news, and what was in the news was usually
politics.
Political topics. So that's how it came about.
So what was the first? Because like I said in the beginning, when I started, you know, comedy. It wasn't called Comedy Central at the time. It was called the Comedy Channel.
Right.
And they had two shows, Short Attention Span Theater and Stand Up. One was hosted by Wally Collins and one was hosted by Tommy Koenig. And I remember them going around the country to different clubs, holding contests. And then the winners of the contest, they'd have a show. You'd each get like 6 minutes and they would tape you and then they would put your stuff on these shows. And that was the first time I had seen you. But what was the first like TV gig that you got?
I think it was there was a guy in New York named Bill Boggs.
Okay.
Still on. He had a show called Comedy Tonight. Tonight, and it was a show in the early 80s, and it was basically they had a studio in New York, and he just put on people who were the New York comics at the time, and everybody did it. Everybody did that show because there was no other. The only other shows were Carson, and Letterman wasn't even on the air yet. So it was like a cable show, and that was the first show. And there was only a few people who got called back. My stuff was basically clean at that point. I could do TV, so I did the harmonica stuff. I did other stuff. You know, and that was the first show I did. I did like 3 or 4 of them, and very few people did more than one, maybe 2. But I did like 3 or 4 because it was funny. It worked well with the audience, and it was relatively clean. You had to be at that time. You had to be clean even on cable.
Right. Yeah, I seem to remember. I think I remember that show because I think did Teddy Bergeron do that show as well?
I'm sure he did.
I remember Teddy being on that. That was one of the first times I had seen him as well.
Yeah.
So from there, did you get other TV gigs or was it? Because it seemed like you had to go to New York to get that, right? That was before they were kind of traveling the country.
Yeah, every once in a while they would come around. Star Search. They had Star Search, and they came to Boston. They came to Stitches, and Ed McMahon's daughter was the booking talent booker for it, and she was very nice. And she came to Stitches, and me, Kevin Meaney, I think Dana Gould did it. It was a certain type of comic who could do 3 minutes of clean or 2 minutes. It was that was the big thing back in the day. It had to be network. It was network, and it had to be clean, and it had to address a national audience.
Right,
and that's much different than a club, And if you could, and Meanie was clean. I was clean. I don't know who else did it off the top. Jack Gallagher, I think, did it. A bunch of people did it. Off the top of my head. But anyway, that was enough. Barry Nightcrew did it. And Barry Nightcrew tells me a funny story. Do you remember Sinbad?
Yeah.
Sinbad won the whole thing, okay? And it was $100,000 grand prize at the time. And that was a ton of money, still is. But anyway, Sinbad was this really phenomenal comic. And he just got in there and he won every week. He won like 6-7 weeks in a row, and he won that year's Star Search in the comedy division. But anyway, my friend Barry Nightcrew, who also did it, was at a party in LA, and there were 5 people at the party, all comics, who all lost to Sinbad. Star Search.
That's funny.
That's pretty funny.
All his collateral damage
that was the conversation. Yeah.
But anyway, so there wasn't a lot of TV, but then you just evolve, and the reality is at the time you had to move to New York or to LA to actually get television shots. And when I did move there, within a year of moving there, I did an HBO special, I did the Tonight Show, I did Comedy Central several times. We made an album, me and Cremens and Will Durst, who is still in he's in San Francisco. He actually has some health problems recently. But he's coming out of it. Me, him, and Randy Credico did an album called Strange Bedfellows on A&M Records. And that was in '88. And that was, they did it around the election, And at the time, Dukakis was running against George Bush the first, Herbert Walker Bush. And so we did an album there, and that was a lot of fun. Again, back in the day, they had albums, right?
Right.
Strange Bedfellows. It was a vinyl. And I guess it did pretty well. It's still out there. So it was, the thing about it is, and I'm sure you guys know this, and I hope this happens to you with your podcast. I hope, it leads to other things. But the whole thing about comedy, any comics are listening or watching, you always want to do stuff because it can lead to other things just inadvertently that they're completely unplanned and unscripted. It just happens. I moved to New York. I was just doing topical stuff in the news. The next thing I know, the A&M Records wants to make a comedy, political satire album, and they auditioned everybody in the city who was doing anything that was topical, and they chose me, Cremens, Durst, and Credico. And so that's how it happened. All of a sudden, geez, I guess I'm a political comic. I didn't
you didn't mean to. You didn't set out to. You just falls into it, right?
Yeah, you're talking about what's going on. At the time, I was talking about immigration. At the time, I was talking about the war on drugs. Just say no. Is that our good friend General Noriega bringing 9 million tons of cocaine into the country?
As we're saying no.
It was stuff about immigration that's still pertinent today. The immigrants, they were saying that undocumented immigrants were taking our jobs. What? Are they taking our jobs, or are they doing our jobs? When's the last time an American citizen went for a job picking lettuce?
Right.
I've never really been happy here at the bank. All these years cooped up in this air-conditioned office, how I've longed for migrant work. What I would give to be out in the fields of Arizona when it's 119 degrees, rip off my shirt, down on my hands and my knees, picking a little lettuce. But can I get that job? No. The Mexicans get all the good jobs. So that was 30 years ago.
Right.
It's 30 years ago, and it's still, still works.
The same, exactly, right.
And so
It's
Yeah.
funny you say that because when you're a comedian that writes just everyday family jokes or stuff that like I talk about, when you're doing topical stuff like that, to me that seems like you got to be on your game all the time, coming up with new material, keeping it relevant, because if I go out and I'm doing my Jimmy Carter jokes right now, the
Yeah.
20 somethings have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
So
right.
you got to stay relevant. So you're doing a lot more writing, a lot more research. So that there's more work to being that type of comic than there would be, just a regular joke or storyteller.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right in terms of to do it right, to do it well, political
Yeah.
satire. It can't just be about the candidate's hair or their attire. I mean, you can
Right.
do that and you'll get away with it and you'll get laughs but that's very superficial. But to get into it, it's more like the policies of either the candidates or the political parties or the trends or the word that
Right.
you used earlier, relevant. Is it relevant? So
Right.
some of the stuff I'm doing in my current show, which is called Jimmy Tingle Live, No Mask, is really about taking the mask off during the pandemic and seeing all the things that we really didn't pay that much attention to that became
During the
more
pandemic.
evident during the pandemic.
Right, right.
And so it's not so much it's topical like Biden said this today, but it's more relevant
Right.
in terms of, for example, immigration, or in terms of essential workers, or in terms of the importance of healthcare, or the importance of government to get things done and to improve the quality of people's lives. It's kind of like that, more so than just topical. But you're right, you got to do the research and you got to know what you're talking about. And personally, I like to listen to both sides of arguments. I get to, because that helps you either shed some light on your point of view, but also reinforce your point of view if the other argument isn't as strong in your
strong. Right. Yeah. Well, you have to, it's critical thinking. You can't just look at one side. You have to look at the other side in order to understand how to refute it or sometimes agree with it, know?
Right. Yeah. I find it really helpful.
Yeah. And I think in the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen the political divide in this country. So you got to be able to know both sides so you can address it when you're up there if you're going to bring up a point, from multiple angles and multiple viewpoints. To kind of keep it funny, in the end. Because, you want to make a point, but you still want to bring a laugh out in the end of it, too.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you that is the goal. That is the goal. And one of the biggest challenges is, and we were talking about Lenny Bruce earlier. One of the biggest challenges I've always had is if you really pay attention to what's going on, sometimes what's really driving, I'll speak for myself, what's really driving my desire to talk about it is the point of view. And then sometimes I'll struggle to find the jokes,
Right.
And I actually have a section of my show now that I'm talking about racial equity in the country, and it goes on for about 5 or 6 minutes, and at the end the people are applauding. But I said, listen, ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing tonight is a new dimension in satire and entertainment. It's called comedy without the laughter. And it gets a big laugh because they've been sitting there for 3 minutes listening to these different things, and I'm getting good at it, folks. I'm getting good at it. Most comedians, every 15 seconds, joke.
They're getting laughs.
Not me.
Right.
My shows have got peaks and valleys.
That's awesome.
Bill Hicks was like that too.
Yes,
he was another one that he would get on a rant about something political, and then all of a sudden he'd just stop. He goes, "Don't worry, folks. There's a big veiny dick joke coming up in a second.
Exactly.
You'll be fine. Let me just make my point, and we'll move on.
And then we'll move on. Right.
And I love when someone does that, when they get into like making a really serious point and then just stop.
Right.
And just acknowledge the point that
because
something funny's coming.
They want to be thought provoking, but they also know that they need to be up there and try and make people laugh. So you have to divert everyone.
Yeah, you gotta deliver, or it becomes a lecture, and half the audience may very well enjoy it, but the other half may very well say, "Geez, I didn't realize we were going to a lecture."
Right,
so
exactly.
You always got to strike that balance. That's what I've tried to do anyway.
So of all the TV appearances that you've had, is there any one or a couple that you were like, wow, this is like a wow moment? Like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm doing this, or I can't believe I'm working with this person, or like, what are some of the standout moments for you?
I would say the first Tonight Show was one of those moments with Johnny and Bob Hope. Yeah. And,
wow. Bob Hope was on the night you were on?
Was on the show, yeah.
Holy shit.
And I was sober 88 days, and I was a nervous wreck, and Johnny gave me the big okay, you know.
He gave you the okay. He didn't call you to the couch, but he gave you the okay.
No, he gave me the okay in a big way. Yeah, it was very good. It was really good. And I'll just give you my closing joke. It was right in 1988. Ronald Reagan just left office. He just George W.
H.W. Bush,
the original, the dad had just been elected. So it's December. So it's in between that period of the old president and the new president coming in, and the Iran-Contra affair.
Front
and center in the news. And there was just an article 2 days ago that's saying between Ronald Reagan and George Bush, they still couldn't remember whether or not they had sold guns to Iran. And so I looked into the camera and I said exactly that. Between Ronald Reagan and George Bush, they still can't remember whether or not they sold guns to Iran. Mr. President, with all due respect, in the future, if you sell guns to people that take Americans hostage, jot it down. The place went crazy. Yeah, the place went crazy, and it was a great joke. And so that was a really beautiful moment. Because coming out of a long period of, active alcoholism, and then just cleaning up my act and getting sober for a year, and getting my friend Colin Quinn told me, Jimmy, if you quit drinking, man, your life could really change a lot. You could do really well in the business. And he was right about that. And then the other big thing was getting on 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes too. I did commentaries on the show in 99 and 2000. Again, I feel like I'm dating myself, but there was a big breakthrough. Was it
after Andy Rooney had passed away, or was it before he passed away? He was just sick. Or
they had a Sunday night show. It's still on every Sunday night, 60 Minutes. They started a Wednesday night show, 60 Minutes.
Oh, okay.
And they started that in early 2000, 99, I think. And they had all their people. They had everybody that they needed for that show. They had Mike Wallace. They had Ed Bradley. They had
Leslie Stahl.
Yeah, they had
I know all of it.
The only person they didn't have was the Andy Rooney guy. And I read an article and I sent him a tape. And anyway, I auditioned and got the job. And there I was on national television. So Somerville Theater to national television. And that was a pretty big moment. That was, I have to say, I did that for 2 seasons, and that was a lot of fun.
Wow. And did the show end after that, or?
No.
Yeah.
It was challenging to come up with a fresh 2 minutes every week. That could appeal to the entire country.
Right. And, you couldn't be political on one side or the other. You had to kind of make everyone.
They did not want political advocacy. They wanted more like what Andy Rooney did about, things that happen to everybody, like you were saying earlier, family stuff, or I lost my keys, or certain bits I did that they loved. But to come up with that every week,
that's a lot.
It was a challenge, and it was challenging for them because they have to depend on having the pieces in the can, ideally, so they know what's on the show. And it's national television, and the parameters of TV at that time were much different than they are now. You know, Lewis Black, who's a friend of mine, started doing Comedy Central. He started working with Jon Stewart at that time, and he went
on the Daily Show,
on the Daily Show. But the parameters for the Comedy Central and the Daily Show are like this: you can say anything. The boundaries for 60 minutes, the commentaries are like this.
So it's network TV, right?
And I thought the whole country was going to have the same political and comedic sensibilities as people from Cambridge and Somerville.
Shocking.
Yeah,
that they didn't.
right.
That
And you
is
know what?
so
You mean
strange.
they don't agree
They really
with me?
don't.
Yeah, they don't agree with me in Texas?
Boise, Idaho thinks differently.
Yeah, right. Who would have thought?
Exactly.
Wow.
So that was a challenge, but it was also what a gift to be on national television, doing your own thing 2 minutes every week for 2 years. It was I was so fortunate.
Yeah. How long have you known Lewis Black? I worked with him once, and he was another guy that was just so gracious, nice. Like, you know, when you're opening for someone on that level, you're like, you know, I'm going to stay out of their way because I don't know if they're trying to think of their stuff beforehand. And he was the one that was like, hey, you want a picture for your social media or anything? And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't want to bother you, but yeah, sure, you know.
That's great. Yeah, I knew Lewis. I got to meet him briefly in New York. And it's interesting because when A&M Records was making that first comedy album, Strange Bedfellows in '88, Lewis was one of the guys that auditioned for it. And he didn't.
Really?
Yeah, he wasn't doing a lot of political stuff at the time. He was a very smart guy.
I mean, he was doing comedy at that time?
He was doing comedy, but he was also doing plays, and he was writing.
Yeah, he was big in the plays.
He was a Yale, you know, authentic.
He did a lot of summer stock theater in upstate New York and Western Mass and stuff, right?
Yeah, and then he gravitated and evolved into a great comic. But at the time, he wasn't quite there yet in terms of the sharp political stuff that they wanted for the album, you know. But anyway, that's when I first met him. Yeah, good guy. Wow. And we're still he played my theater when I had the theater in Davis Square.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I never got a chance to
work with him.
Work with Lewis Black.
Yeah,
no,
very nice.
That's very nice. That's one of the ones.
Actually, that's one of the few things. He's one of the few people that my kids are impressed with that I've worked with. You know, I'll name people and they're like, "Yeah, big deal." But when I say, "Oh, you know the guy that played Anger on the Pixar movie Inside Out," like I worked with him. This is me and him in the green room, and they're like, "Oh my God," you know.
That's
him
funny.
and Dave Coulier, because you know who doesn't know Uncle Joey from Full House. So my kids were impressed with that one too.
That's great. That's really
my kids are adults now, and they're still not impressed with anything.
They don't give a shit.
No, they just don't give a shit. Yeah.
That's funny. So wow moments. What else do we ask besides funny bad
Well,
days?
those were a couple. I mean, and now just getting back on stage is a blast. I'm doing.
That's what I was going to say. What are you doing now?
Yeah.
Now that we're coming out of COVID.
Yeah, this show. I have to say, first of all, I mean, COVID obviously was horrible, but there was a lot of. I don't know when you guys started your podcast, but I know that I did a lot of Zoom events that I never would have even thought of doing, but we couldn't perform live, but doing a lot of Zoom and learning how to do it and this whole other medium. So that was helpful because we were able to do the Tingle reunion. I did a bunch of political fundraisers. We did fundraisers for other organizations all on Zoom. And that was really good. One of the things though, what I'm doing this new show is the No Mask show is really about looking at the pandemic and what changed and what was not funny about it, but you know, the humor that,
there's humor in it.
I mean, I don't know if you guys were paranoid or not, but when I heard, first of all, I didn't think it was a big deal. Like, this will be gone in a week, right?
Yeah.
But when I heard that Tom Hanks
and Rita Wilson.
Yeah. When I heard Tom Hanks tested positive, I said, oh my God, I watched Forrest Gump last night. Am I at risk? Am I at risk? Can the virus come through the television setting?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Apparently it cannot.
I watched Castaway. I know he was alone, but I was watching with him.
I know.
Right. Did he get it from Wilson?
Yeah.
I mean, am I in trouble now? You know, what the hell's going on?
Right. Yeah. We started the podcast 4 years ago, but I will say previous to COVID, the only way we did it was in person. So we either had people come here to the studio or we would meet people at like a restaurant halfway between. So like we had Chance Langton on and he recommended a restaurant in, I forgot where it was. It was like Quincy. Yeah. So we met him at the restaurant and then we had Ken Rogerson on at that restaurant. But the pandemic kind of forced us, like everyone else.
Yeah.
It forced everyone to upskill their tech skills.
Yeah.
To the point where now we're using StreamYard. We're able to stream it on, on Facebook and on Twitch and other places. So in a way, it was kind of good in that because we wouldn't have been able to get, like, we've had people like Bobby Collins, Al Ducharme, Bernadette. Al we already had on, but we've been able to get some West Coast people on that we never would, like even Martin Olson.
Yeah.
We had Paul Barkley on. He goes, "Oh, you need to get Martin Olson," and we're like, when the hell's the next time we're going to be in LA?
Well, the biggest benefit, we started by doing it via phone call into our computer, and the audio quality wasn't great.
Right.
So then we started doing phone calls via Facebook Messenger, which the audio quality was better. And we did that with Al Del Benny, and he's in Australia.
Wow.
And we're like, you know what? This is, if we do it via the internet, one, the audio quality is better, and we can get even more people. And then now we've upgraded to the StreamYard thing where we like the conversation like this, where we're talking face to face with our guests.
Yeah.
It's much better conversation. Just like for comedians, you do a Zoom show, you do a show in front of a live audience, very different shows.
Totally different.
It's so different. We did the Zoom shows out of necessity, but we'll take a live show anytime. But this to us is as close as we're going to get to having people here in the Aceman studio with us.
Right.
Is face to face like this, and it works. It works.
Yeah.
And we've adapted over the past year, and the podcast has also grown a lot over the past year to 18 months.
As a result,
as a result of us constantly trying to evolve it and make it, better all the time. It's constant improvement. And we started 18 months ago. We had like 3,000 downloads a month, and now we're doing 20,000 downloads.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
So we've grown quite a bit.
But that's the thing. We've been able to expand our guest, like, I don't know if you know Judy Carter, but,
she wrote the comedy
for
Bible.
any of us new comics, when we were coming up, every mentor said, "Oh, you got to get the Comedy Bible by Judy Carter." We actually had Judy on, like, but that never would have happened because she's in LA. That never would have happened if we were just limited to just whoever we could get to come here or go up to Boston to meet, So
through this reinventing ourselves, we've opened up to all these new avenues now, which is like you said before, putting stuff out there, and you don't know what avenues it's going to open up.
Right.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the name of the game, is innovation, whatever it is. And you guys were able to innovate, and congratulations. And
thanks.
And we were able to do the same thing on here. We weren't on StreamYard, but I do want to talk to you about that later offline, because most of ours were on Zoom, and we did quite an amazing number of shows on Zoom. Show to film. I made a film during the pandemic, Jimmy Tingle's 2020 Vision. Why would a comedian run for office? And
that's
that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that, because you ran. What did you run for in Massachusetts?
I ran for Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. First time running, got 213,313 votes. First time running, came in second place. That's
wow.
Yeah, that's the good news. The bad news, 2-person race. So we got the silver medal, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, you started off glass half full there.
Yeah, right. The other person got 2 million votes.
Yeah, but it was a great experience.
Would you run again? Would you ever run again?
People ask me that all the time, and I've thought about it this time. I haven't made a firm decision. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't say no, because I didn't think I would run the first time, but I really felt that one of the reasons I ran is I said, if Donald Trump can use his communication skills for his message, I could try to use my communication skills.
Absolutely.
For my message. And people say, how did Donald Trump win? And one of the reasons he won in 2016, he had short, simple messages.
That's
Three words, build the wall, drain the swamp, lock her up, make America great. 3 words. You know something?
Yeah.
We have our own 3 words. Feed the hungry, house the homeless, heal the sick, welcome the stranger, and I would add, fix the tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's the
Yeah.
T. If John
Yeah.
F. Kennedy could inspire a generation to go to the moon, we can get a train to go to Springfield.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Well
so
said.
funny when you talk to people from Boston, because I used to tell people, oh yeah, when I first started I have a day job. I work in medical sales. And when I first got my job in 1997, I moved to Springfield and I covered the Berkshires, from Springfield out to the Berkshires to the New York border. And when I would talk to people from Boston and I'd say, oh yeah, I'm living in Western Mass, they go, oh, what are you in, Worcester? I'm like, you guys, it's your state. You guys realize there's a whole half a state beyond Worcester, right?
Right.
But that I agree. Why doesn't the commuter rail go out to Pittsfield and Springfield and and Worcester? That would be it makes sense.
Yeah. And so one of the things I was just trying to focus on is communicating the message of the party, and my personal message. And I think that's key to politics because you got to be able to communicate what your point of view is and to help lead people or to show them, what your ideas are. And
unfortunately, everything in politics is sound bites.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example.
Nowadays.
I'm kind of like moderate, and I was not a fan of Bernie Sanders because his short messages were so far left of what I believe in. But I listened to him on Joe Rogan's podcast where he had the benefit of being on for a full 2 hours.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, you know what? I don't agree with everything, but I understand him better. And I agree with a lot of I agree with some of what he said.
Yeah.
I just didn't agree with the little sound bites. You know what I mean?
Right. Because a lot of times sound bites can be taken out of context.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're not hearing the whole thing. On Rogan, he was able to expand on those thoughts and really explain things out. Because I listened to when he was on Rogan too, and I thought he was excellent.
He did a great job. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
And he said it. He even said it because Rogan even said, you come off as a crazy old guy.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, because I'm trying to get people's attention. For the 2 minutes that I'm on, I'm trying to get people's attention. So yeah, I'm acting crazy, but that's not how I really am. And I was really impressed with that. It made him a real person. But to your point, if you're going to try and activate your base of people, you have to have those sound bites that are going to draw people in,
Yeah, absolutely. And the other reason that I ran is one of the most important reasons, and it's still front and center, and we can see it right now with what the current president is trying to do, is that government matters, and that government can change people's lives, and at times government can actually save people's lives. During the 1980s, doing comedy, I lost 3 friends to alcohol and drugs. I personally was going downhill in a big way because of those substances. I started calling places for help: detoxes, rehabs, treatment centers, hospitals. I get the runaround. There's no beds. There's long lines. Call back next week. You don't have insurance. I called the Cambridge City Hospital. They had a federally funded program there called Cahill 3. I said to the man who answered the phone, this is a week before Christmas, 1987. I said to the man who answered the phone, I really need help. Without missing a beat, this man said, you called the right place. How often do you hear that? You called the right place. I went into that hospital. I stayed 7 days through Christmas, 1987. I got out. I moved to New York City. I focused on stand-up comedy and recovery. That's all I did for a year. A year later, to the week, I went on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Wow.
And like I said earlier, the other guest that night was Bob Hope. And I would say to people, I'm running for lieutenant governor in the state of Massachusetts, in large measure to hopefully ensure that when anybody in the state of Massachusetts picks up a phone and reaches out for help, the answer on the other end always should be,
you called the right place. Right, exactly.
And that was the hallmark of my, of my campaign about government being there for people in times of need.
Right. Wow.
Especially on the opioid and alcoholism. Now, you're from Rhode Island?
Yeah.
It's a big problem down there, right?
Oh, absolutely. The opioid crisis. And it's, because I work in public health, I work in vaccines. So I'm on a lot of calls for the Department of Health. And they've talked about how the opioid crisis has only grown during the pandemic because, people are stuck at home all alone. They're desperate already.
Right.
They're in despair already.
Right.
Now they're only going to use even more.
And they can't get into places because you couldn't go.
Because you couldn't get in, right? Exactly.
There's a couple of great documentaries on HBO. One of them is called Cape Cod, Heroin USA.
Cape Cod, yep.
Where they follow 5 different people on Cape Cod and their heroin addictions. And then
Lisa King did that. She's a friend of mine. Yep.
Oh yeah, and there's a new one that just came out. It's a multi-part documentary where they go through the history of opioids.
Yeah.
When they started, how some of these drug companies knew how addictive they were, and the big bonuses they were paying out to guys that were selling them and pushing them and stuff like this. And it just came out about 6 months ago. And,
is it called The Crime of the Century? Is that?
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you. That one was pretty interesting. Now, again, you watch anything like this, you're seeing one person's perspective. Oh, yeah. So you got to kind of keep that in mind when you're watching it. But when some of the stuff they show is pretty thought-provoking.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. It's in the end, it comes down to a lot of money is being made.
Yeah. A lot of money's being made. And here's another example. In The Crime of the Century, they had like in Massachusetts, you can't get 100 Oxycontin without a prescription,
Right.
But in certain states that practice deregulation, like Florida, like West Virginia, they were shipping millions of pills to these places, and you didn't need a prescription. And they would have these people, they would have lines around the corners of addicts and dealers going back to other states with these big hundreds and thousands of pills, and the companies were making money and the states weren't regulating it. And that's another thing about government. Who else is going to step in if not the government? The profit motive of the drug companies is not going to inhibit them from selling drugs. You need government. You need authorities to make sure that the drugs are for people who actually have cancer and not people who want to get high.
Right. The unfortunate thing with some of these, because I work for a drug company, the unfortunate thing is it paints a wide brush as if every company is like this.
Yeah, they're all
and
bad.
It's not all like that. Like I work for a very reputable company. And actually what I've seen over the past 25 years of working is it's not the research-based pharmaceutical companies, it's the generic companies. When I was a pharmacy tech at CVS like 30 years ago, and the markup between a generic and a brand name was huge. Like you could see the difference. Nowadays, if you get regular Flonase, I'm just naming a product, for $60, the generic's $58.
Yeah.
The generic companies did no research for that, but they're the ones that are actually making way more.
Wow.
There's way bigger problems. And that's the problem. And then when you find out these companies, like I remember being in the EMT, EpiPens were like $25.
Yeah.
Well, then some company swooped in, bought the company that makes EpiPens and jacked up the price. It's a generic medication. Epinephrine has been around for years. The generic company is the one that bought it and then jacked the price up.
Yeah.
So, that's the only issue when I watch some of these documentaries. They paint this wide brush of big pharma, and not all big pharma is like that.
What's the markup on Flintstone vitamins?
Flintstone vitamins is
it's got to be huge.
If you get the CVS brand, it's not bad.
No, I'm talking genuine.
Genuine? All right, the real deal?
Yeah,
not bad. It's not bad.
That's got to be an ugly market right there. There's a whole black market for that shit.
Yeah, I know. No, actually, I was just looking it up because there's a really good book by a Dr. Paul Offit called Pandora's Lab: 7 Stories of Science Gone Wrong. And his point in the book is, here are 7 times where science thought it was this and then realized because of continued testing and studies that, all right, maybe this wasn't good. And it talks about like the butter versus margarine in the 70s. Like they thought margarine was going to be the healthy alternative to butter. And then they found out it was actually even more caustic to the heart than butter. But the reason why I bring it up is because there is a whole chapter on opium and the opioid crisis, because opium has 7 or 8 different compounds in it. And each time they isolated a compound, scientists were like, okay, this is the one that's going to hurt, that's going to cure pain, but not make you addicted. And oxycodone was the last of those things that was isolated, where they were like, all right, that's it. This is the one. This is the one that's not going to cause people to become addicted, but it's going to help with pain. And then it backfired in their face. And it talks about the opioid crisis. Really good book.
Right.
You know, whenever
we got deep into this.
Whenever we bring up medication on this podcast,
I'm sorry. I'm passionate about what I do.
No, you're educated in it, and you know about it, and you always give great information on it.
But the company, but I watched that documentary, and you're right. Yeah, absolutely. That company was wrong for what they were doing.
It was the Sackler family.
Yeah, and they were wrong. And you know, when they started looking, there were these doctors where the doctors would run a mill. You know, they run an opioid mill. Yeah. And it was like, listen, if you're a rep and you're calling on a doctor where you can only call on them at 7:30 at night because that's when their office hours are, then you're a scumbag.
Well, there was that other one, not to get into all the documentaries, but what was the one on Netflix about the father whose son died? By opioids, yeah. And that was the one I was talking about. The doctor I don't know if you saw that one, Jimmy, but I forgot the name of it. The father started investigating where his son got the pills from and traced it back to this doctor that only had nighttime office hours. Yeah. And people would line up to go in there, and they were all just getting prescriptions for, oxy all night long.
It literally looked like a methadone clinic.
Yes.
But at 8 o'clock at night.
And the pharmaceutical rep for that area that serviced that doctor made 3 times per year what any of the other reps in his company made in their area.
Because of that one
Because of this one doctor. Because he was filling so much business.
So listen, and I know we're getting way off topic, but, I remember when I first started, a doctor, I was selling an antibiotic, and I was trying to talk to him about this antibiotic. And he goes, I'm not going to name any other companies, but he said, the rep from this company just bought me these golf clubs. What are you going to do for me?
Wow.
So it's perpetuated by doctors. Believe me, when I mark my words, and you heard it here on this podcast, I have been planning this for a long time, but I need to retire first because I need to not have any repercussions.
Write your book.
I am going to write a book called Bad Medicine. And it's going to be the other side of the story, because there have been plenty of whistleblower reps who have ratted on their companies. My company has never forced me to do anything that I felt was unethical. But I can tell you, I have a whole book full of stories of doctors who asked me to do things that were definitely unethical.
Yeah.
And it's going to be called Bad Medicine. So be on the lookout 7 years.
Well, I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm going to have you on to talk about it.
All right, absolutely. Yeah, I'll have to be behind a screen, and we'll have to. Exactly. That's what it's going to be like.
So let me ask you, how many people does it take for you guys to run this podcast? It's you two. And how many producers do you have? What kind of setup do you have?
Honestly, it's just the 2 of us. That's the great thing with StreamYard.
Wow.
I am able to produce. So as we're talking, if you see me look down every once in a while, it's only because I'm checking comments. Because people can put in comments. So I just noticed. So I'm going to show one.
Jen.
Our friend Jen. We need more people wanting the answer to be, you call the right place. Great thought, Jimmy. So our friend Jen, who watches every week, said that's the right thing. And so yeah, that's it. Jen also said I was a pharmacy tech too, Ace. I remember seeing that minimal markup on generics. Yeah. So that doesn't happen anymore.
It's funny you say that, Jimmy, because we were just talking recently that between video and we upload it to all the regular podcast download site stuff, we're getting to the point where it's getting to be too much. Yeah. For both of us.
We could use a producer.
We could use another person to help us.
Yeah.
With some of this stuff. I mean, we're getting it done, but
Where are you doing it from right now?
So the Acement is my basement. I have this is a studio that we built in my finished basement.
Okay.
And one of our past guests said, you called this the basement, and I think you should call it the Acement because my name is Ace.
Right.
And so we had this whole logo made up, and that's what you see behind us live from the Acement. And so that's it. We just do it from here. We have a webcam.
What town are you in?
I'm in I'm North Providence. That's where I grew up.
That's where you grew up.
We're in Coventry, Rhode Island, right in the middle of the state.
Okay, cool.
And so we have a couple of lights. We have a webcam. We have my computer, and then we have a monitor behind the webcam. So when we're looking at you on the monitor, it looks like we're looking at the camera.
Oh, cool.
So that way, because what we found was the first few episodes, we were just
we're looking down like this.
We were using the webcam on the computer, and we were looking down as we were typing.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just threw, like, even us watching it after the fact, we were like, it doesn't really look that good.
Right.
So we decided to get a webcam for what, $100. It wasn't that much.
Yeah, it was recommended by a friend of ours that does a lot of streaming shows. It works really well. So
that's great. Well, listen, can you plug my website and tell people they can come up to
absolutely
that weekend?
We just got one last question, Jimmy, and then we will plug away.
But tell me your website first.
Yeah, we're gonna put it, and so we can post it up there so everyone can see it as well.
Sure, JimmyTingle.com.
That's a complicated one. Give us a minute.
All right. www.
Oh, thank God you told us that part.
Yeah.
Ace is not the best speller, so there you go.
I did it.
Now you're on the screen.
Now it's on the screen, so people can see it. It's JimmyTingle.com.
So we will leave that up while we ask our favorite question.
Twitter handle is @JimmyTingle.
All right, I'll put that too.
Nice and simple. @JimmyTingle. So are you active on Twitter? Do you find yourself being pretty active on there?
Pretty active. I'm too positive of a person to get in. I don't trash people. I don't even trash politicians. I read things. I retweet a lot of things that if I find something uplifting or that I agree with strongly, I try. I'm active. I got about 14,000 followers, but I'm not like on it. I'm not tweeting 20 times a day,
Right. But because some people are, every thought that pops in their head, they're throwing up on Twitter. So
right.
They have a lot of followers. If you do that, that's how you get followers. I think I'm more shy.
Well, listen, you got more than me. I think I have like 200 followers because I never put anything on Twitter.
Yeah, we're neither one of us are big on Twitter. We do more on Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook. I'm there to Facebook as well. Fan page. Yeah, and we're doing the show that I'm doing this weekend is at the Cotuit Center for the Arts on Cape Cod. Cotuit, and it's a great little theater. I've got a couple hundred seats, and you can get tickets at jimmytingle.com. And then I'm coming up to next Tuesday night at June 15th. I'll be at the Gloucester Stage Company is producing me at a place called Windover, and that's up in Rockport, Mass. And all that information's at the website, jimmytingle.com. So you folks who said some kind words about the show tonight, please check us out, or at least spread the word. And it's been excellent being with you guys. And I want to talk to you offline about the podcast world.
Definitely.
I want to get mine up and running.
Definitely.
You got it. We just got one last question.
We have one last question that we ask every guest. And so we kind of talked about, how you got started, what made you get started. We talk about high moments. We always like to end the show by asking our guest about the funny bad gig moment. And that's the gig that was, and every comic, even if you've been doing it 6 months, you have one.
You have at least one.
It's that gig that the night of the show, it wasn't funny. It was just a bad gig. But the further away you get from it, you're in the green room and all the comics are sitting around going, oh my God, I had this shitty gig. You wouldn't believe it. And then you're sitting there and you go, really? You think that's bad? Oh, hold my beer. I got one for you.
Your war story.
Your war story.
Well, one of the most memorable moments for me. I mean, I loved it so much that in when I first started, I would get up and I would go out and I would do street performing and Harvard Square. And like I said earlier, oftentimes I'd have a few beers in me, and I'd be in the middle of Harvard Square, and I'd put down the hat and I'd be doing my act. And my act was kind of blue. It was the song parodies, and it was it was kind of ranting, and there was a fine line between, is this guy a performer or is he just out
ranting?
And anyway, I had this big crowd around me, and they're laughing, and I got the hat down, and this woman comes up to me, very professorial type of woman, and she says, "I think what you do is very interesting. I don't think you should subject everybody to it." And that always stuck in my head.
I like start with the compliment.
Yeah, exactly.
Then the constructive criticism.
She gave you what we call in management the feedback sandwich.
Yes.
You always start with the positive, and then here's what you could improve on. And now what you're supposed to do is end it with a positive.
Right.
But she just left you hanging.
She just said, enough.
That's funny.
Enough.
Yeah.
That was a fun experience.
Those are the type of gigs where you're like, and we've talked about it. We actually did a show on our first season called It's Going to Be a Bad Gig When. And we had a panel of other comics, and we said, let's come up with the 10 things.
Top 10.
That if you're a comic and you walk into any one of these situations, it's going to be a bad gig. And we couldn't even narrow it down to 10. We came up with 12. And some of them were like, you show up and comedy is a surprise to the audience. Like the audience doesn't know you're the comedian. And hey, guess what? We're going to have a comedian. Or
no sound system, no stage, no lighting.
Right.
Backyard parties.
There's kids in the audience.
There are 1,000 different things that we've all
a wedding, doing comedy at a wedding.
Yeah, one of the telltale signs is it's going to be a tough gig when they won't turn off the Bruins game.
Yeah, that was one of them.
Mine was a Red Sox game.
We basically generalized it to
sporting events.
When you're doing comedy at a sports bar during playoffs, and they say, "Oh, don't worry about the TV. We're going to mute it."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like they're going to pay attention to me.
Right.
I had that with the Red Sox Yankees playoff game. They said, we're just going to mute all the TVs in a sports bar and let us perform.
Yeah.
Nobody was listening.
No.
Right.
I did it during the Bruins playoffs once, and I literally looked at the TV during my set. I said, all right, fuck this. We're going to watch the TV while they're on, and then I'll start telling jokes during the commercials. And I went back and forth between commercials. That was the only time I could tell jokes.
That was good thinking. That was
good well,
thinking.
You had to,
Yeah.
That was the only way to survive.
You got to scrap and come up with something in those moments. That's all you can do. But Jimmy, thank you so much, man. This was a great conversation. We really appreciate it.
We have been so looking forward to having you on for so long.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate it.
And folks, if you are watching this live, definitely go to Jimmy's website, jimmytingle.com. Check him out on Twitter. If you have a chance to see him, he's one of those guys when we talk about, the Mount Rushmore of Boston comedy. This is one of the faces you would see on that Mount Rushmore of Boston comedy.
Oh, you guys are kind, man. You guys are kind. Continue success. I hope the best for you, and keep up the good work. And love to come back sometime, and I'd love to catch up on your podcast secrets.
Yes.
Secrets.
Definitely, we will.
Hold on a second. We're going to put you in the green room, Jimmy. Wrap up the show, and we'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Yeah, we'll talk to you in a minute. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
So, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, this was a wow moment for us on the podcast.
Absolutely.
I just what a great guy, just in general, amazing comedian. And again, I meant that. If you ever have a chance to see Jimmy Tingle, that's a bucket list for your comedy.
And if you're in Massachusetts, you've got an opportunity over the next couple of weeks. So between the Cape and then up in Rockport, Mass.
Yeah.
Definitely go to jimmytingle.com. Check out his website and check out those shows. And if you can get there, you definitely need to.
Yeah, you go to jimmytingle.com, buy your tickets, put in the special code ACEMAN, and get 0% off right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Keep talking, because I wanted to talk about the reviews that we got.
Yeah,
so we got some reviews.
We got 3 new reviews, which again, quickly, those are the biggest thing you can do for us right now. If you want to help out the podcast, go wherever you download your podcast and give us a 5-star written review. Just a few words. We got one really nice one that just kind of blew us away.
We got a couple of really good ones over the past week. So, we just got one tonight. How's this? Best show, truly funny. Thank you, Victoria. Robin. Robin gave us one. Found this podcast by mistake, and I am hooked. As someone who considers herself to be a humor writer, I can't get enough of these two characters. I'm from East Coast, and I love to hear guys talk about people I've seen or seen live or on TV. I enjoy hearing about what truly goes through a comic's mind before, during, and after a performance. The episode I heard today featured a comedian from Long Island, probably Rich Walker. Oh, no. So I really felt at home with that one. I knew all the venues and towns. And Ace is really good at impressions. I swear to God, I don't know this person, and I didn't pay her.
Ace's mom.
Yeah. Thanks,
no,
Mom.
She's not from Long Island, so.
No, Ace, I laughed out loud several times during the podcast. I feel bad because I'm pushing all my other podcasts to the side in order to listen to this one. Sorry to Conan O'Brien, my favorite murder, and my son. Robin, I love you. I'm just saying that. And then
and Robin, Ace is single.
From Loud Champ, I love the Acement with Scott and Ace. No matter the guest, it's so much fun. Noah, if you like funny podcasts, I think this podcast is for you. So we can't thank you guys enough.
And all those current ones are going into the drawing that we're having at the end of June for a Behind the Funny Live from the Acement hoodie.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. So people, if you haven't done it yet, please take the time, 5-star written review, and you will also be entered in that drawing.
Yeah. And just a reminder, I just put it up on the scroll. The rest of June is going to be absolutely amazing. Next week we have Brian Kiley, another guy. If you listen to the Mike Bent episode, he said him and Brian Kiley were the youngest guys from the Ding Ho days. Brian Kiley has gone on to do some amazing things, including writing for the Conan O'Brien show for years, and he's been the head writer for the past couple of years.
That's not bad.
I'd love to, we're really looking forward to that one next week. And then, as we said to Jimmy,
the Sean
Maury episode is on the 23rd of this month. That's going to be amazing.
Then on the 30th.
Sean Maury is the Big Bang of Boston comedy scene.
Yes.
And then on the 30th, we have our friends from the Wicked Funny podcast.
You'll need your seatbelts for that one.
Yeah, that we don't even know where that's going to go. It's just going to be topics and a lot of laughing.
Yeah, that's going to get a little crazy.
Edibles for all we know.
Not possibly. Yeah, there will be edibles.
Yeah, for Brian.
So it's going to be crazy. So please join us for all of those. And thank you so much for joining us this week. And other than that,
we will see you next week.